Welcome to another episode of The Evaluation Couch, the podcast where we talk about career growth and the field of evaluation. This is your host, Maria Montenegro. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. I'm very grateful for having Eric Barela with me today in the couch. Eric has 20 years of experience as an evaluator focusing on the fields of urban education and technology innovation. Throughout his career, Eric has transitioned across different sectors as an evaluator, from nonprofit to foundations to working in a Fortune 500 company, and is now a consultant. Today, he's here to share about his career journey and his reflections on transitioning across different sectors. Eric, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the Evaluation Couch today. And for those that don't know you, can you please share a bit about you?
Sure. So I am Eric Barela. I have been working in the U.S. As an internal M&E professional for a little over 20 years now. Worked in a variety of settings, but more than that, I am other things as well. I'm also a gay Latino male, which has really influenced the way that I see the world and the way that I see evaluation and social impact measurement. I'm also an uncle to 3 really great kids who are the light of my life. I guess I can say I am a burner. I have been to Burning Man in Nevada, and I've been to a regional Burning Man event in South Africa multiple times. That is something about me that not too many people know. What else? What else can I say? One time I was on a TV game show, and I did okay.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that, Eric. I'm also a proud aunt of 3. One thing I love about preparing and meeting with people for my podcast is doing that research, getting to know you during this conversation, but then also a little bit beforehand. So I actually did know you're a burner. I enjoyed reading about the values in Burning Man, the alignment with values, and some interesting conversations around sustainability and cultural appropriation. Do you want to share a bit more about how that's showing up in your life?
I think definitely the way that it's showing up in my life, especially at this point in time in the United States, there's a lot of things in flux right now, and not necessarily in the most positive way. And I've become very aware of my position in certain places, and it changes because I know that as an ethnic minority, as a sexual orientation minority, I don't have as much privilege as some others. However, I am still a male, and there is definitely privilege there. I've been working hard at identifying where that privilege intersects with my work. I think it's something like Burning Man and the principles there. It's recognizing that one needs to be present in one's life. That means understanding what your privilege is, understanding how you can use that to help others not only just get their foot in the door, but really to bring them in. I'm still a very proud proponent of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives.
And on that topic of the different positions you've had, I'm inviting you to share from your career experiences in the different sectors that you've moved across, what your insights are in terms of moving as a monitoring and evaluation expert into different sectors and what the reality, some of the opportunities and some of the challenges are within those spaces. Once again, thank you for being here today, especially as there's so much going on, not only in the United States, but across the world in terms of the social impact space. I think your experiences are going to have a lot to contribute to those that are thinking about their next steps. And sometimes those next steps involve career pivots. So to get us started, can you share what your career trajectory has been and what are some of those transitions that you've experienced?
Sure, I can definitely do that. So I started my career as I was finishing up graduate school and started at the Los Angeles Unified School District, working in their program evaluation and research branch as an internal evaluator, working on evaluating numerous programs and policies. And once the 2008 recession hit, it wasn't a really great time to be in the public sector. So I moved to the nonprofit sector and worked for a nonprofit called Partners in School Innovation based in San Francisco as their chief knowledge and impact officer, leading the internal evaluation of their programs. Uh, After being there for about 5 years, I decided to move to the foundation sector and applied for a job at the Salesforce Foundation. Got that and worked for the Salesforce Foundation for a couple of years. At the time, Salesforce Foundation was working in three areas: strategic grants, workforce development and education, in employee inspired giving, so employee volunteering as well as employee donation matching, and technology. The Salesforce Foundation at the time provided free or reduced cost licenses to any 501c3 nonprofit or country equivalent around the world, or any nonprofit education institution. I was working within all three of those areas, but started to work more in the technology space within the foundation. Eventually, the foundation split into the Salesforce Foundation, which was those first two, the grants and the employee inspired giving, and Salesforce.org, which was really focused on technology. So I was working then for what was a tax-paying nonprofit at Salesforce.org. And in 2019, that became acquired by Salesforce. So Salesforce.org went from being a separate nonprofit to being a for-profit business unit within Salesforce. Within Salesforce, I went from foundation to broader nonprofit to corporate. My last year at Salesforce, I was actually working under the chief impact officer at the company. So being taken out of Salesforce.org, looking at social impact more broadly within the company, and also working with their sustainability team, their ESG reporting team, and other sustainability departments.
Thank you for sharing all of those different transitions, Eric. And now my understanding is you're doing consulting.
Yes. So I guess the second half of that is in January 2023, I was laid off, and the social impact measurement arm of the company was basically shut. From there, I started to do some consulting, first working with a startup, providing some evaluation expertise, and now working for a small consulting firm with my teammate from Salesforce. We were a small but mighty department of two back in the day. We're working together again at Raya Cooper Impact Consulting. I get to work with a wonderful woman named Morgan Burris Finley, and we're having a lot of fun.
Eric, it sounds from your career trajectory that you have experienced several disruptions or changes due to economic and political situations. What is your view on what is happening right now and how it's impacting the careers of people within the social impact and evaluation space?
Yeah, I think the disruptions that are happening are actually affecting people all over the evaluation spectrum. There are a lot of evaluators working with federal grants, working with nonprofits that relied on the federal government for quite a bit of their funding. And I know of colleagues who have had to cancel work or stop work midway because there's no more money to do it. At the corporate level, I think there is a lot of change and shifting. I saw it when I was laid off. In corporations, they can change quickly and determine that their needs would be better met by hiring different types of people. And they can make those changes pretty quickly. So I think the disruption is happening regardless of where we're situated. I know evaluators internal to nonprofits. I know evaluators internal to corporations. I know evaluators that are external working with nonprofits, evaluators who are external working with corporations. All of them are being affected by what's going on in the world today.
Yeah, thank you for that. A lot of people that have lost their jobs are looking into, okay, what's next? And how do I transition? Many hoping to still do what they've been trained to do, what they're passionate about, and moving into different sectors. Foundations and the corporate sector, as well as consulting, are on the top of list of things that people are looking into. And very luckily for me, you have experience transitioning into all of those. I'm wondering if you can reflect on what was useful when you transitioned through those different sectors.
I think what has been really useful for me, first and foremost, is having a good support system, both personally as well as professionally. My husband has been an incredible sounding board and is somebody who can help me really see things that maybe because I'm so deep into it, I'm not seeing for myself. He helps me see the forest for the trees, which is a wonderful thing to have. So I have a very good support system of fellow evaluators who have become friends, who have become thought partners. And I can talk to them about things I'm thinking about and not have to explain what it means to transition from nonprofit to foundation or foundation to corporate. They get it and they understand. And so here, if I can put in a plug for joining any kind of evaluation organization you can, whether it's local, national, international, I definitely see it as a positive. Uh, I've been a member of the American Evaluation Association for 25 years now. I have gotten a lot of I've gotten a lot of knowledge. I've learned a lot from it, but the networking peers, friends, and thought partners that I have encountered through that have helped me immensely. I get to talk with people who are doing similar work, who have potentially have engaged in similar transitions to really find out like what it's all about. So for me, that first transition from school district to nonprofit was really, I was going to get laid off from my school district job. And I thought, I want to try something different, maybe a little more stable. So I went to the nonprofit sector. And after working in the nonprofit sector for a while, I decided that I wanted a new challenge. And so decided to go into the foundation sector. Uh, I didn't necessarily make the choice to transition from foundation to corporate. However, there definitely was a transition there where I had been working internally for not-for-profit organizations for a long time and had to learn some things about how to approach this line of work in a corporate setting. And then after getting laid off, having been in this career for quite a while, really starting to think to myself, what do I still love about this work? What haven't I done yet? What do I want to challenge myself with? And what do I want to have as similar as possible? Just because I want to challenge myself doesn't mean that I want to have everything different. So talking about the situation I went to from being at Salesforce to working as an independent contractor with a wonderful startup for a while, and then deciding to go into the consulting sector, I got to surround myself with really good people. And so that became really important to me, being able to do the work that I want to do with the people who I want to do it with. So when the opportunity arose to be able to work with somebody who I really enjoyed working with, I jumped at the chance, both as that independent contractor working to help a startup get up and running, as well as in this new Raya Cooper Impact Consulting venture.
I love that. One thing that we've been discussing a lot in the podcast lately has been about communities of support and the important role they play in our career satisfaction, but also throughout these transitions that really came through in your answer. I'm curious if you can share at a high level, because we don't have hours to talk about this, and I think they could each be one episode, but at a high level, what are some key differences that you experienced in terms of your evaluation practice in a foundation relative to corporate and now in your consulting?
My practice has evolved, I'm going to say. Working within the school district, working within the nonprofit, even working within the foundation, there's definitely a focus on measurement and evaluation, where their interest is in answering three important questions: what, so what, and now what? What's happening? So what does it all mean? Now what do we do with all of this information? I feel there's an equal emphasis on all three. Definitely wanting to understand programmatic implementation and how that affects outputs and outcomes. As I've transitioned to the corporate space, becoming more of a social impact measurement professional, there's definitely been more emphasis on outputs and outcomes. What is happening? How can we report it? How can we get it out there? How can we move ahead? How can we go forward? I find that in the not-for-profit sector where I've worked, there's definitely been a mentality of looking back to look forward. In the corporate sector, I found that's not so much the case, but also considering how corporations tend to operate, always looking for the next big thing, the next big innovation. There is a forward-looking mindset. And so that's something that needed to be considered. You're doing a lot more measuring within the corporate space. You're doing a lot more monitoring, and you're working with some pretty big marketing professionals to figure out what the most appropriate story is to tell. I found that I had far less time to tell a story in the corporate space than I did in the nonprofit space. And so figuring out what is going to be the best way to tell that story, I've been incredibly fortunate in my career because I've been able to work with some incredible marketing professionals who understand the need to appropriately tell that social impact story. It's been incredible. So I've been really fortunate. Going into the consulting space now, the biggest transition for me is going from being an internal evaluator to being an external evaluator. I have to be a little bit less precious about my work because I'm not going to be there to facilitate conversations, to ensure that decision-making is taking place, to ensure that teams are taking action from the report that I've generated, from the recommendations that we've worked to generate together. I've had to let go. And it's funny because a lot of my colleagues in the space are like, duh, of course you have to do that. I've never been in that space. And so for me, coming back to this very basic thing has been a learning for me. It really has. Um, I think something else that I've noticed too is timelines. As I've gone through my career, timelines have shortened. The longest timelines I had to do my work was in the school district, where I had time to collect data from 48 different schools and write up a 70-page report. I tried that in the nonprofit sector, and they said, you created an amazing report. We're not going to read it. So you have to learn how to pick and choose and how to tell that story. And the timelines just getting shorter, with corporate being, hey, we have a big conference coming up. We want to get the word out. We also have a lot of processes to get all this information to the point where all the different teams that need to be informed can approve it. So we have to turn that around even more. And in consulting, that timeline, what's in the contract can sometimes be renegotiated, but sometimes we've got to abide by it. That has been a learning for me to adjust my timeline to the work and to pick out the things that are going to be the most compelling, the most useful for the client. I'm definitely somebody who believes in utilization and evaluation. If it's not used, it's not good. That I really want to make sure that somebody can do something with what I'm creating. So being able to really think about that. And again, to be able to tell that story in the most compelling way, in the most accurate way, in the shortest amount of time possible.
Thank you for sharing all of that. So much of that resonated with me. And I try to think when I'm preparing for these conversations, the different angles and different ways in which being an evaluator in these spaces can change. But the timelines hasn't been on my radar. And now that you say it, I haven't experienced that within my career. Have a follow-up question on that. So I work in the public sector, and I don't know if that was your same experience, but timelines are long. Red tape and processes and bureaucracy and inefficiencies are also existent. I'm wondering how that experience was different in the corporate sector where efficiencies are more prioritized and what that allowed you to do within your evaluation work.
I wish I could tell you that the bureaucracy and obstacles lessened as I moved from school district to nonprofit to foundation to corporate. I can't, because they were still there. It's just different things. You have legal departments that you have to go through. You sometimes have PR departments you have to go through. You have to make sure that everything is approved. You have to make sure every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and everyone who needs to have input has actually given their input. Sometimes there are people who can stop things from happening because you didn't ask them to read the report in the first place. That's all they wanted. But you have to think of those things. And so I think the interpersonal aspect of our work doesn't go away just because we're in a corporate setting. We have to know how to work with people. We have to know what appropriate processes are. We have to know who gatekeepers are. Same stuff, different building, honestly. But I wish I had an answer for you. But yeah, they change, but they don't.
No, thank you for that answer. I have to admit my bubble has been burst, but it's
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
that's okay. That's a reality. I love it. Okay, Eric, I also know that you have written about visionary evaluation, and I'm hoping you can introduce that concept for the audience. What I'm curious to know is, across your experiences in different sectors, how has your ability to align with visionary evaluation practice been possible for you, if at all?
It's definitely been possible. I love the visionary evaluation work and have been fortunate to be a part of that community. The thing that really resonates with me about visionary evaluation is the notion of praxis, the notion of being reflective about one's work. And I think this gets back to the things I was saying earlier about privilege. As an evaluator, we have a privileged view in some ways and a non-privileged view in others. We are potentially outside experts, but we don't necessarily know the inner workings or politics of an organization. And so understanding one's place in the evaluation is a really, really important thing. And again, it also goes back to those interpersonal skills, knowing how to work with people. We're not necessarily going to be objective, but we've got to be transparent about that. I've always said objectivity is a learned skill. Just because you're external doesn't mean you're objective. And just because you're internal doesn't mean you can't be objective. So I think visionary evaluation also helps me place myself in the evaluation so that I understand what I'm bringing to the work as well as what I'm not bringing to the work. I think being able to see things as interconnected systems is also very helpful. One of the words that I've heard a lot during my career is silo. We don't work in silos, or we shouldn't work in silos. And even if we do work in silos, things are interconnected. And especially at a place like a large corporation, things can be pretty interconnected. And so thinking about that interconnection is also going to be incredibly important. So, where I am in the evaluation, how things are connected, the visionary evaluation work that Beverly Parsons started, Dylan has worked on as well. I'm honored to have been an author in that original book, and am pleased to be able to still bring those characteristics forward in my work.
So it sounds like it's something that has guided your practice across those different sectors. And I liked what you mentioned around and the interpersonal skills, understanding, creating connections with people, and understanding how the different silos interact with each other. I recall one of the most valuable things I did when I joined a complex health organization without any health background before to do evaluation was setting up one-on-one meetings with people across different teams that are doing evaluation or evaluation related work. And I think that decision 4.5 years ago has dictated my growth within the organization, because it gave me a really comprehensive understanding of how the different departments and the different teams and groups involved in evaluation and in creating change interact. Do you have any tips for the audience on how they can come into these new organizations, new sectors, and understand this interconnectedness?
I think a couple of things I can offer are, first and foremost, listen. Really pay attention. Know that you have skills in your toolbox as an evaluator that should give you an advantage in trying to figure out the different politics that are going on, the different interpersonal interactions that are needed, and who has the potential to keep you from doing the work that you need to do, and who do you need to have on your side. That comes from interacting. One of the things I like about being an evaluator is that we're applied researchers. We work with people. We know that our work does not exist in a vacuum. We've got to take that out and really learn, because if we're not doing our homework in that way, we can turn in the most incredible report that's ever been written with all of the recommendations that are going to help an organization be successful. If we haven't done that work, it might just sit on a shelf gathering dust, and really do our work well if that doesn't happen. So I think it's remembering that the reports that we write, the recommendations that we deliver, need to be acted on by people. People have to do something with it. And so understanding all of these can help us actually make sure that our work isn't just useful, but it's also used. I am very fond of the saying, there is a wide chasm between useful and used. Just because you create something useful doesn't mean anybody's going to do anything with it. You've got to actually do that work that's not methodological in origin to really make sure that the work is going to be used and that it'll resonate. I think about the context domain in the American Evaluation Association's evaluator competencies, really understanding the organization and the program you're looking at. I think about the guiding principles for evaluators, where it's really about what are you doing ethically to make sure that your work is not harming anybody. And these are things to really think about as well.
I love that. Thank you for all those reflections that can help guide people experiencing transitions. And on the topic of transitions, we know a lot of people are rethinking what they thought their careers were going to look like. They are looking into other sectors. So one thing I'm curious to hear your thoughts on is stability. I'm seeing the discussions around stability in different sectors in social media as people are trying to find positions where they can have more long term and not be at risk of these external factors that are impacting our economy, our politics, funding, and all of those things. So, based on your personal experience, if someone was to ask you, out of the sectors you've been in, which one would you say is the most stable that I should be looking at? What would you say?
I would say it depends. I thought my work in school districts would be incredibly stable because it's a school district. And once in a generation economic downturn comes around, that threw that out the window. Uh, I thought that my job at Salesforce would be lasting longer. I was there for about 8.5 years. But again, outside pressures, including for Salesforce, activist investors, really required the company to figure out where it wanted to go and make some difficult decisions. And so even then, I was in this job for quite a while and it disappeared. So I think stability is a nice thing when you can get it, but it's not necessarily something that we should be looking for much. I hate saying this because I've spent much of my career looking for it. I worked for 7 years in the school district. I worked for 5 years in a nonprofit. I worked for 8.5 years at Salesforce. And so I tend to stay in jobs for quite a while whenever I can. Stability has been a really important thing for me. But time and time again, I've had to confront that stability isn't necessarily going to be there. I think right now about what's happening in the US government. People I know who've had their jobs for quite a while are suddenly in danger of losing them. It's just winds of change that come around that we can't necessarily predict that can make things very difficult. Academia seems to be somewhat stable, but I've never worked in academia, so I really don't know. I really can't speak to that. I wish I had a more positive answer, but I think the thing that I hold on to is losing a job is an opportunity for me to take stock in what I love about the profession and what I don't love about the profession and try to find something that can help to sustain that. I may not be able to go on some trips for a while. I may have to downsize for a bit, but working in this profession, that's the nature of it, unfortunately.
I appreciate that you brought in as well the opportunity that is at hand that I think many are experiencing as well. Can you share what are some opportunities that have opened up for you in this new stage of your career and how that is allowing you to get closer to the things you love about evaluation and maybe addressing or removing some of the things that you don't love?
Yeah. As I said before, the thing that is really guiding me right now is doing the work I like to do with the people I like to do it with. Right now, I'm working with a great team. Morgan and I have two other people on the team, and they're great. They come from different fields. So I'm getting to interact with people who I may not have before working in the corporate setting or working in a nonprofit setting. I'm working with somebody who has a really strong public health background, and I'm not sure I would have been able to work with somebody like that before. Uh, I'm getting to work on projects with some really interesting, really cool organizations trying to do some really great things. And I get a bit of variety now. I get to measure, I get to evaluate, and I get to do it in a way that's somewhat new for me. Being an external evaluator is not where I've spent my career. I'm enjoying this. If the right job comes along, allowing me to go back into the internal evaluation space, perhaps I'll consider it. But right now, where I'm at in my career, having done this for nearly 25 years, to be able to still find some things that are new for me, it's pretty great. I'm also looking to do a bit more writing. I've been at this for nearly 25 years. I've learned a thing or two that I should be sharing with people. I'm looking to expand my mentorship and sponsorship. As I said before, it's not just about getting somebody's foot in the door. It's about bringing somebody in. It's about holding the door open, bringing people in, making sure that they're having a good time at the party. And being somebody who's been at this career for a long time, being somebody who is doing a better job of recognizing my privilege and hopefully using it for good is giving me an opportunity to do more of that. Yeah, I'm really excited for where things are going. I've learned a lot and met a lot of great people. And I am very proud to call myself an evaluator, a social impact measurement professional. I have fallen in love with the profession again. And I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to work with everybody I've been able to work with, through the years. But right now, I'm enjoying being a consultant. It's fun if I get to actually use that word.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Eric. What is my takeaway from your experiences is that you continue to be open to exploring these different stages, seeing the positive sides of them and developing new skills. And I really appreciate that commitment to continuing that learning process throughout your career. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience, and especially with those at a point where they're going to begin those transitions in their careers?
To piggyback on what you just said, don't stop learning. There's a lot of young people coming in with interesting ideas. There's a lot coming out of scholarship, but there's also a lot coming out of practice that we can learn from. And so I think once we stop learning and refining our practice, we can stagnate. We can get stale. We can find that this maybe isn't the career that we thought it was because we're not making the most of it. So don't stop learning and don't stop trying new things. I think also build that support system. Build those colleagues who you can talk to about anything. They're going to be really helpful as you make a transition. They'll be able to potentially give you very good professional advice, but also they're going to comfort you as you're thinking about doing this big thing. Sometimes you just need to hear a good word from somebody, and having those people in your life who can do that to you are very important too. Reach out to me if you have any questions about transitioning, whether it's going to be a voluntary or an involuntary transition. I'm always available to chat about that. But I think seeing a transition as an opportunity to better yourself, to fall back in love with your profession, I think are really important. I got to transition as opposed to I had to transition. Granted, I had to transition, but I also got to. So seeing it as an opportunity is incredibly important.
Thank you so much for all that you have shared, and also reinforcing that evaluators are great. For all of those needing some support, reach out to a fellow evaluator, start building those networks. I'm also going to add a link with a blog from Eric about visionary evaluation for those that want to learn more about this. And once again, Eric, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, Maria. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate.